Hey guys, Mike here. Today we're going to talk about adding a bilge pump to my 2021 Sea-Doo Fish Pro. Do you really need a bilge pump? Well, yes and no. And what I mean by that is it already comes with a kind of a quasi built-in bilge pump. It has this hose that goes to the low pressure side of your impeller. As long as the impeller is moving in a forward direction, it's scavenging the hull for you. So no. However, if you're like myself where I do a lot of offshore running, and you run into something, because there's a lot of stuff floating out in the ocean that you sometimes just don't know it's there. You run into it and crack the hull. That little small built-in scavenging system doesn't have the horsepower to be able to keep up with something large. So in that instance, yes. Also, if you roll this thing and you're in a sea where you can't get it up and the sea's crashing over it and more water is getting into all the cracks and you start getting a lot of water in it, it depends. If you have a lot of water in there, that little thing's going to have a hard time keeping up with it. A bilge pump would really be nice to have. So in that instance, yes. Also, if the engine is not running and you're pulled up to an island and the ass end is way down and you're not near it and water is crashing over it or whatever the instance might be, somehow if you get water in the hull that is a lot of water, this little internal scavenging system just doesn't have the capability to really pump it out quick. So in that instance, yes, you need one. Plus, if you're like myself, I'm a lifetime boater, having safety items on board is just next to, just the way to do things correctly. It's one of those things, if you have it on board, you probably will never need it. So adding a bilge pump to this thing is so simple. So let's get started. All right, the first thing you want to do is remove the seat. This back piece comes off by pressing in the button here, and there's one on the other side. That part lifts off. Front piece lifts off by this little handle here, and then slide backward, and it's off. Then you have to take this cover off. You do that. You do that with this T30 Torx bit. Notice it's not an Allen. It has a spline on the end, which is referred to as a Torx, T-O-R-X, and it's a T30 size. I use it in my drill. And you can remove these like that. There's 7 of these. Let's take that back. There's 8 of these. And then there's 2 up front. So actually there's 10 altogether. They're just all the same. The thing is, from here back, they all have a captive nut underneath, which means the nut stays in place as part of the fiberglass, part of the hull. So this comes right out. These 2 front ones, for some reason, I don't know why, they left the captive nut off, and they actually have a nut and a washer underneath this one. So you need to get yourself a 10mm wrench. Hold the nut on the bottom of these 2 front ones. Put your hand underneath it so when the nut drops off, when you get this unscrewed, you don't let the nut and the washer drop down in the hull because it'll go under the engine and you'll really be screwed. For one reason is the nut appears to be brass or stainless steel, which means it won't stick to a magnet. So it's going to be rolling around down there forever. You probably never get it out. So be very meticulous and careful when you pull these 2 front ones out that you don't lose the nut. See here? There's a washer and a nut just on the back of it. So nothing's holding it in place like the other ones. So be very careful that you don't lose these. And the same over on this side. Almost forgot to mention, there's actually 3 more here. So these have to be taken out also. And don't worry, these have captive nuts on the bottom, so nothing will fall down. So it's only these 2 that you have to be on the front that you have to worry about. So now that they're all out, this just lifts right up. And there you go. All right, now that we have the cover off, let's take a look to see where we're going to mount things. First off, you need to know where the battery is located because it needs to be connected directly to the battery terminals not through any key switch, so it's always operational. The battery's up at the left front, right down near the bottom. You see where those red wires are at? I've connected up a terminal under the screw, the hot wire, and then it comes out to a fused wire. So that right there, that fused wire is where I'm going to be connecting my bilge pump. Now, the bilge pump preferred location is in the back right-hand side. The left-hand side is where your transducer is located, right down there. That would have been the best location, but we have to mount it on the opposite side. This is the bilge pump setup that I'm going with. The small Tsunami. They seem to work real well. I've used a lot of them. They're easy to swap out if you need to. And this is one of the items here that seems to work better. I've always used the smaller kind that's like this. This is the switch float relay that turns this on when the transom gets full of water, or the hull gets full of water. Reason I like this one, if you notice, see how thick it is? It has a lot more flotation to it. I've had the smaller ones not have enough flotation, and some of this area down in here gets a little bit gunked up. If you have any typical, water and what have you, a little bit of light sludge gets down in here, and this kind of gets gunked up. And the smaller, thinner white ones that you've seen that are about half the thickness of this, or a quarter the thickness of this, don't have enough lift. This one's nice and thick, and I've never had this one stick. It has a lot of flotation to it. So that's why I like this. That's one part. The second part is all the ones that I've seen have this typical PVC stiff kind of wiring that after a year or so down in the bilge, the wire gets really hard. This is actually true silicone wire. It's nice and soft, and it has tin copper inside of it. They've really done a nice job with just the wiring to make it last longer. How I mounted it is I cut a small piece of this wood. It's about a 1/2 inch by maybe 2.5, and it's a nice firm piece of wood that I got down at Lowe's. Home Depot has it also. Cut 2 little small squares. It's just big enough for the bilge pump to fit on and the float switch to fit on, and I ended up coating them in good old Marine Tex. Coated all 4 sides, or how many sides the wood has, both sides and the edges. Just a thin coat, just so that it protects the wood from water. Then I mounted it down inside This is the right side of the boat. One in the back is for the switch, and the one in the front is for the bilge pump. Now, so you know the bilge pump comes on, I put a Sauna Alert in here. Basically it's a backup beeper, like you hear on a lot of trucks when they back up. So it's environmentally sound. It'll handle moisture, water spray and stuff. And it's got a nice little bracket on it. And if we hook it up, here's what it sounds like. So you'll hear that if the bilge pump comes on. You know there's a problem, and you'll be able to hear that even if you're inside the house and you've got a dock that's 100 yards away. You'd hear it. So I'm going to mount this and connect this up to the float switch. So if the float switch comes on, it'll turn this on along with the bilge pump. Now the wire you want to use is special marine wire. It's high temperature, oil and water resistant. And the way it becomes marine wire, besides having the insulation for the high temperature and water resistant, is this is 18 gauge wire. The wire actually is completely silver tinned. So it's copper, plus it has a coating on the copper every single strand that allows it to not get corrosion in the salt air or moist air. So definitely spend a little extra money and use the proper wire. I'll put all the links down below of everything that I bought and where to get it. Also do yourself a favor. The crimps, you want to crimp the wires together between your bilge pump and your switch and your power. These crimps are also marine crimps. And what makes them a marine crimp is they have heat shrink on the outside that comes out about a ½ inch further that has a sticky gooey substance inside. So when you use the flame to heat and shrink this down, yeah, you could use a heating gun on it too, which I have misplaced right now, so we're going to use fire. Fire does it all. We got fire, baby. And as it shrinks down, it liquefies a sticky substance inside that shrinks around the wire. And now that is sealed, so not only is it a heat shrink, but it has a sticky goo inside there that also is sticking to the wire. So there's no way moisture can get inside. So definitely use these also. And use a heat gun, don't use a flame like I did, unless you really want to. By the way, it's okay to use a flame on there, I'm just kind of kidding, because these are high temp marine style crimps, so actually this plastic can handle the heat where the normal kinds typically will melt. And I mounted my little Sauna Alert right up front here. This is right above the battery. There's a bracket. There's a little fuse box right here. Right beside the fuse box, there's a little bracket, if you can see that or not. So I mounted the Sauna Alert right on top of it. So it's right up front. Faces away in case I spray. I mean, it's supposed to be a water resistant, but it's nice to have it up out of the way because I'll be spraying my engine off. I don't want to get it wet anyway. And of course, I heat shrunk this also. And look what I found. A heat gun. Woohoo! Okay, now for drilling the hole for the bilge output, you want to put it up as high as possible in an area that's not going to interfere with anything. This, for me, seems to be about the best spot. Also, you got to make sure inside you can't go any higher because there's a lip where this drops down. So this is actually as high as I can go. So I've already started it. There we go. Notice I put a bag, taped a bag under here to catch all the dust. Same on the inside, so I have nothing falling down in the engine. Here's the outlet that I'm using. It's a 90-degree angle. You want to use that because if you come straight in through here, the hose would actually have to almost transition past the engine, and it makes a hard bend to get back down to the pump. So with this 90, which are not that easy to find, so I'll show the link down there below where I got this. With a 90, I can come off with the hose straight down to the pump. Also, there's no need to really put really heavy seal around there, just some silicone around it, because it tightens on there tight enough where it's not going to leak anyway. Plus, as you know, these hulls are not like a regular boat. They will get water splashed into them. When you come back, you will sometimes see water in there, even though you think you were really, really careful. These things are pretty wet. They have a pretty wet ride, and water does get in there. So I just put a little bit of silicone around here, and a little silicone on the inside to hold this nut from slipping. That's all it's really needed. And here's the finished product. Everything's screwed down nicely, tie wrapped up. I use these little nylon cleats that are glued to the hull with a product called Flex Set. And then I can tie wrap all my cables neatly out of the way. And here's a list of items. There's the 500-gallon bilge pump. You can get it also in an 800-gallon if you like to go that big. Float switch. You can get bilge pumps that have built-in float switches, but I've never been a fan of them. They just never seem to be 100% reliable. I like this particular float switch here.
bilge hose. The Bilge Flex on the list is actually different than what you saw in the video. It's lighter weight, easier to deal with. And there's the 3/4 inch through hull. Marine Tex, guys. Marine Tex is the most amazing stuff. I've used it on all my boats, inside and out. Easy to deal with and just works great. There's the cable tie mounts and the waterproof backup alarm. Some of the guys are mounting their outlets so that the water sprays on their leg so they can tell if their bilge pump runs. I didn't like that idea. I put it in the closest, best place I could think of, and then the alarm goes off. So if I'm not even near it, I could hear it if I was in the house that it was parked behind the house. I hope this helps somebody and that you get a good use out of it. Have a great day. Bye.